and then we can share these. I am Lynn Basa, and I own a building at the corner of Drake and Milwaukee, and I started something called the Corner Project, and I'll tell you a little bit why. I'm going to talk a little bit later, and I'm going to go very fast because I want to introduce Raphael Grills to speak a little bit about his project. Because one of the things the Corner Project does is it builds partnerships and relationships with all kinds of organizations and individuals as a catalyst. And I've done some public art projects around the country, and so many times you have to do something about this community or do something about the history of the community. And I just really got sick of it. I felt like, what can I actually do that makes a difference in my community? So even though my studio is at the corner of Drake and Milwaukee, I had never really looked at the street. And I looked outside and I asked myself the question, what can I do with what I've got with where I am? And what I saw was this relatively intact old Main Street that was immigrant and working class then, and it's immigrant working class now. And I saw a lot of vacant storefronts. And so I started, the first phase of the Corner Project was just doing research and finding out what other neighborhoods are doing about this. And so it's really just evolved from there. Everything is driven by talking to, originally it's merchants and property owners, but now talking more with our partners are Logan Square Neighborhood Association, Logan Square Chamber of Commerce, Office of Urban Design, Development, and like Puerto Rican Art Alliance and the Alderman's Office, and I hope A&A. And I'm just going to let you know a little bit about what we do. Emily, you will appreciate this graphic. Emily's been helping me with my graphic, visualizing this in the graphics. This is one that I came up with. So basically, Corner is a connector. We connect, and I'm a neighborhood busybody. So I'll just go out and connect people with I'm trying to connect people to each other, people to this place, these 3 blocks on Milwaukee Avenue between Kimball and Central Park, and connect us to our heritage, because one of the first things we talked about when we got together as a group of business and property owners with Diane Bowe from Urban Maine was the question that we were talking around was how do we preserve the character of our neighborhood while embracing growth? And the first thing that group had trouble with was we're like, what character? This is just a bunch of old buildings. And it's not a bunch of old buildings, it's an ecosystem. And what happens to one is tied to what happens to the other. And I'm not just talking about the built environment, I'm talking about if a business, Farine was evicted by its landlord recently because they wouldn't pay double the rent. And now the social heart of our neighborhood has kind of been torn out. So all of these things go together to make a neighborhood worth living in. And so I want to build pride and identity around that. I want to identify opportunities for, I'm going to have to put my glasses on, I can't, sorry. Which means I can't see you all very well, but now I can see what I'm reading. So collaborating with social historians, social organizations, art organizations, historic preservationists. And then it's very action-oriented, and that's the most important thing. I'm just so tired of art that's about issues instead of art that actually does something about issues. And so everything we do has a purpose to it. And I've listed some of the actions that we're taking in 2018. One of them was the zoning from B to B2-1 to try to prevent more community input before buildings are torn down. That was the whole point of that. And then Corner Conversations, these are topical conversations that happen within Corner. We're forming the Milwaukee Avenue Stakeholders Alliance, which we have one member here, Nick, who's just bought a building on the street and is doing a beautiful renovation of it. And this came out of our visioning meeting we had with Diane Bowe from Urban Maine from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And our vision statement is on there. So we're tying in the preservation of our buildings to its walkability, its livability, its economic accessibility to multiple small business owners rather than than property going into the hands of a few people, that it would be dispersed over many people. And because of the scale of the buildings on that street, it enables that. And a real important thing, and probably sounds really boring, but a database. We're almost finished. I'm working with Haley Woodridge who just recently got her urban planning degree from UIC, on putting together a database of every single property and business on the street and the characteristics of the building, because our big project, what we have to tackle is the vacancies, is the storefront vacancies. Currently, 31 out of 91 storefronts are vacant on our building, on our street, on these 3 blocks. And there are many reasons for that, and that's one of the reasons that the Corner Project is partnering with Raphael's project, is how we can get some movement there so our properties become less stagnant. And then a really fun one, I left this to last, is and remember again, the Corner Project doesn't do anything superficially. These are banners, and these banners aren't just about how, you can pass these around, how, they're not a beautification project, although they will have that result. What?
He tried to hand it to me, and I.
Okay, let me get that.
Oh my God. So it's Logan Square Neighborhood Association is working on their 5-year quality of life plan. And Raphael and Jessica Wobekund from the Logan Square Chamber and I and some other people were on the Economic Development Committee. And they are going to be putting together first of all, we need people to be able to talk to each other on the street. And the banners were a way to start building this sense of character and this sense of identity among the business owners. So LSNA, through the list quality of life plan that they're putting together, gave us a grant to subsidize banners, street banners. And so there were 35 light poles on the 3 blocks. They sold out almost instantly. So all the businesses are participated. They only have to pay $80 for a banner that normally would cost $250, and they're going to be 8 feet tall. And the Logan Square Neighborhood Association was very, and because of the butterfly banner that's on the side, or butterfly mural that's on the side of my building, and this whole association with transformation, transition, migration, the butterfly is a meaningful symbol. So what I did is I just took some of my paintings and I took sections of them and split them in half, and I'm customizing every single banner to go with the flavor of each business. And so now I want to introduce Raphael. You don't have to get up and talk if you don't want to, but we've been meeting off and on, and I'll let you talk for yourself, but Raphael has a very special set of skills that is going to come in really handy, specifically about doing something about this, just a plan for revitalizing our Main Street.
All right.
Yeah, no idea.
So I'll just introduce myself and tell you guys a little bit about my group. My name is Raphael Robles. I am co-founder of a group called the Office of Urban Development, or ODE. And we are a design and development consulting group, so we are focused on equitable design and equitable development. So we're working with communities and individuals and organizations in consulting, so we can basically show them how they can develop buildings or spaces for people in a way that benefits the masses, as opposed to having, as Lynn said, sort of like one developer develop for the many. So some of the ways in which we are doing that is, and what we're going to potentially partner with the Corner Project on, is asset mapping and urban planning. So figuring out, it sounds really simple and boring, but figuring out who lives in certain places, what they have access to, what they don't have access to, like the mental health clinic, for example, right? Different communities have different needs. So once we identify what's missing, then we can organize around how to provide assistance in the development design side. And then furthermore, we're teaching real estate development to community members in the hopes that people will start developing their own smaller parcels, whether that's additions, single family homes, 2 flats, 3 flats, and maybe even organize for more. We feel like the information about how to develop real estate is only segmented to very few people in our communities, usually wealthier individuals, and what we're doing is taking that information, bringing it to the masses, and once people know how to do it, some will choose to do it and some will not, but at the end of the day, we're hoping that everybody gets more involved in the process through community meetings, through advocating with different government officials, and things like that. So I'm excited to start working on the corner project, sort of area. We're doing some work in North Lawndale, we're doing some work in Logan Square, and little by little we're kind of reaching more people. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions in regard to this? Go ahead, Mitch.
Lynn, what's happening with the contextual zoning? What is the latest?
It's just dead. I mean, it's just stalled in the legal tie-up. It went through the zoning committee at city council, and they referred it to legal, and I think they're just gonna let it die there.
Are you gonna try to revive it, or?
What is that?
Yeah, what is it?
You wanna explain what you're?
It was because there are so few, to preserve buildings, because these buildings are not considered important, so they're not landmarked, even though the whole district represents real Chicago. I mean, the people who really built Chicago, we have something golden here in our relatively intact Main Street. And so we can't get it landmarked. None of the business owners want it landmarked anyway, because that puts so many restrictions on if they do renovation. And so one of the ways to stop not having buildings torn down, like what was happening with that beautiful terracotta bakery, even though that was also landmarked, that was orange rated, is to lower the zoning. So the zoning on the first floor would stay the same it is now as 2, so like same use, exact use that is now. And then on the higher levels, it would be higher density, so that a developer would need to ask for, go to the community, go through the alderman to get permission to put more density there. And then that would give us some kind of leverage to say, okay, you can have more density, just don't tear this building down. So that's basically what that was for. And so contextual zoning is to keep, so what's happening down on Milwaukee Avenue, down near California with the giant buildings, so that we can prevent that sort of thing happening here, or like what they did in Lincoln Square. They downzoned 20 years ago to be 2-1 or be 1-1. They were drastic. And so they have a very actively involved community there. So like what we would have with the Milwaukee Avenue Stakeholders Alliance. And so that group voted to have like a really big building built there because they thought, that would be great. That's what they wanted. And so the point is they had a plan, which is what we're eventually getting to. They had a plan, they had a vision. So it wasn't just like, every man for himself, I can do whatever I want with this building, so that we start having a vision together as a community for that. Oh, any other questions?
Anybody else? Questions?
Should I stand right there?
Nobody else? So, does anybody have anything else to add to the meeting?